always thought I had a pretty good relationship with my mom. She wasn't the warmest, the type to gush over every little thing I did, but I never doubted she cared. At least, I didn't until recently. Growing up, I was the responsible one. The one who stayed home on weekends, the one who picked up the pieces when she had one of her episodes, or when something went wrong. My mom had a knack for pulling herself out of trouble, but only after a lot of scrambling and a bit of financial help, usually from me. She'd never ask for it outright, but I could always tell when the bills were piling up. And that's when I'd step in, even when I was barely scraping by myself. I didn't mind it at first. I thought it was just what family did, right? She was my mom. And even though I was working 2 jobs and living in a small apartment, I knew she needed help. I didn't have a lot, but I always made sure she didn't go without. She was just so used to me being there that she didn't see it as anything out of the ordinary. It was like a silent agreement we had, only she never had to say it. Then there was my half-brother, Danny. He was always there, in the background of our lives, but he didn't really show up for anything unless there was something in it for him. My mom never really expected him to contribute, and he never did. He had his own life, or at least that's what I thought. I don't know why I was always the one who had to be present, who had to take care of things. Maybe it's because I was the girl, or maybe because I was just more reliable. I can't count the times I'd help her with errands, make sure the bills were paid, all while Danny would be off, living his life without any of these responsibilities. It was always clear she preferred him in certain ways. When she spoke about him, her voice softened, like he was the golden child. Even when he couldn't be bothered to help, she'd defend him, make excuses for why he was busy or working on his own things. Meanwhile, I was left holding the emotional and financial weight of our family. For a while, I just told myself it didn't matter, that I was doing what had to be done. And honestly, there was a part of me that wanted to believe I was the one who was needed more, the one who mattered more to her. But there was always this underlying feeling, this quiet nagging that something wasn't right. I'd never really thought much about what would happen when she passed, what would become of her things, her assets. It wasn't something I spent a lot of time thinking about, but in the back of my mind, I assumed everything would eventually go to me. After all, I was the one who was always there, the one who had put in the time and energy to help her when no one else would. I didn't even think it was a conversation worth having, because the idea of her leaving everything to me was just expected. That's why, when I found out what she'd really done, it felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath me. One afternoon, as I was paying off some of her bills online, I came across a strange document in her email inbox. It was an official-looking file titled Last Will and Testament. At first, I just brushed it off, thinking it was a draft she'd worked on years ago. But curiosity got the best of me, and I opened it. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I leave all my assets to my son, Danny. To my daughter, I leave my love and memories. I stared at the screen, numb. I don't know how long I sat there, my hands frozen over the keyboard. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't make sense of what I had just read. My mother, who I had supported, who I had sacrificed for, had left everything to a man who barely knew she existed unless it involved a check or a handout. And all I got were love and memories? I felt my whole body grow cold. Was this some kind of joke? Maybe it was a mistake, but as I read through the rest of the document, there was no mistake. She had done this deliberately. I remember sitting there, staring at that screen, wondering if I had somehow missed something. I'd been the one picking up the slack, the one who made sure her car payments were up to date, the one who kept her house running. All those times she would thank me with a smile, never realizing how much it cost me to keep everything afloat. And now, this. Danny, who barely lifted a finger, was going to inherit everything while I was left with nothing but empty promises. I was furious, devastated, and so deeply hurt. How could she do this to me? How could she give everything to him? It wasn't just about the money, it was about the betrayal, all those years of giving her everything I had, and this is how she repaid me. That was the moment I decided it was over. I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep letting myself be taken advantage of. I picked up the phone and immediately called the bank to stop the automatic payments I had set up for her bills. I cut off all contact. I didn't even leave a note. I simply walked away. A month went by in silence. I thought maybe I could find peace in distancing myself from the pain. But then she called. The words she said in that call will stick with me forever. "I need money. The bills are piling up. Can you send me some?" There was no hello, no apology for the betrayal, no acknowledgement that she had just torn my world apart. It was just a demand. I didn't even hesitate. I knew exactly what I was going to say. The moment she called was when everything shifted. I had spent a month trying to convince myself I was doing the right thing cutting ties, stopping the financial support. It wasn't easy. Every time I sat down to pay my own bills, I'd feel a pang of guilt for not helping her. But then I'd remember that stupid will. My mother had literally turned her back on me in favor of a man who had done nothing for her except take and take. She had made her choice, and I had to make mine. But that phone call? It was a wake-up call I didn't expect. The ring startled me from my thoughts as I sat on the couch, half watching an old movie I'd seen 100 times. I stared at the screen for a moment before glancing at my phone. My stomach dropped when I saw her name on the caller ID. I didn't want to pick it up. I knew what she was going to ask. Money, of course, but the words, the demand that came through the line, were still enough to freeze me in place. "Hey, honey." My mom's voice came through the phone, too cheery for my taste, like nothing had changed between us. "I need money. The bills are piling up. Can you send me some?" I felt my blood pressure rise instantly. A few weeks ago, I would have jumped at the chance to help her, but now it felt like a slap in the face. There was no, "How have you been?" or even a, "I'm sorry for what I've done." Just an immediate cold demand. I couldn't help but feel sick. I swallowed, trying to hold my composure. "Did you not get my last message, Mom?" I said, my voice coming out more strained than I intended. "I told you I couldn't do this anymore. I'm done paying your bills." "What are you talking about?" She sounded genuinely confused. "You've always helped me. You can't just stop now." I couldn't believe her. It was like she had no idea why I'd cut ties. My mom, my own mother, had turned everything into a transaction, and I was just the one who kept paying the price. She couldn't play the misunderstood matriarch. She had been exposed, and everyone knew it. The calls started that same night. At first, I ignored them. Then came the voicemails. By the next morning, I had over a dozen messages, some from her, some from family members trying to get me to be reasonable. "Lena, what you did was completely unnecessary. I was just trying to look out for you. Call me back," she said, her voice high with indignation. "Sweetheart, you're making too big of a deal out of this. It was just a misunderstanding," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her tone. "Lena, if you don't call me back, you're going to regret this," she snapped, her voice hard with anger. Ah, there it was. The shift from damage control to full-blown threats. I knew I had to face her eventually, and frankly, I wanted to. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. For the first time in my life, I held all the power, and I wasn't going to let her pretend that what she had done was forgivable. So I called her back. She answered on the first ring. "Lena, finally, we need to talk," she said. She said, her voice clipped with frustration. I sat down at the kitchen table, my fingers drumming against the wood. "Yeah, we do," I said, keeping my voice even. There was a pause, like she was trying to gauge my mood. Then she let out a breath, softening her voice. "You overreacted," she said, slipping into the role of the exasperated mother. I clenched my jaw. "I overreacted?" I asked, my voice sharp. I asked, feeling my patience snap. "You shouldn't have sent that message to the entire family," she said. She said, her voice tight with barely concealed anger. "You shouldn't have tried to bribe my fiancé into leaving me," I shot back. I shot back, my heart pounding in my chest. She let out a humorless laugh. Oh, please, Daniel was never going to take it. It was just a suggestion, she said. She said, her voice dismissive. My grip tightened on the phone. A suggestion? You told him to name his price? You literally tried to buy him off, like I was some defective item you were trying to return, I said. I said, my voice shaking with fury. Her tone turned icy. I was looking out for you, she said. She said I wasn't going to be her punching bag any longer, and for the first time in my life, I felt a strange sense of freedom. No more. I was done. The first few days after I cut ties with my mother were the hardest. I kept expecting her to call, to apologize, or even just to ask if I was okay. Instead, the silence between us stretched out like an endless void, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, more wrong than I had thought. I had done what I needed to do, but the guilt gnawed at me, deeper than I cared to admit. But there was more to it than just guilt. My mind kept going back to Danny, my half-brother, the one who had always been there, but only when it suited him. I started to wonder if he knew anything about the will, if he even knew I was now estranged from our mother. It wasn't like he ever called me or reached out to check in on me. The guy could go months without speaking to me, only to suddenly appear when he needed something, usually from Mom. And yet, there I was, left holding the bag, financially and emotionally. My phone rang again on the fourth day. I recognized the number. It was Danny. My stomach turned as I debated whether or not to answer. I hadn't talked to him in over a year, not since the last time he asked Mom for money, and I had to step in, cover his debts, and act like everything was fine. That's the kind of relationship we had. It was always transactional with him. I picked up the phone, my heart racing. "What's up?" I said, trying to sound neutral. "Hey, sis!" Danny's voice came through the phone, easygoing as always. It felt like he was talking to me just like it was any other day. "Listen, I was thinking about you. How's everything going?" I couldn't tell if he was being genuine or if this was just him trying to worm his way back in. My patience was thin. "Yeah, well, things have been better," I said, my tone cooler than I intended. "Yeah? I heard from Mom the other day. She told me you stopped helping her out." He sounded almost casual about it, like he wasn't quite grasping the weight of what I had just done. "Uh-huh," I said, cutting him off before he could continue. "And?" He paused like he was trying to figure out what to say. "Well, I just think that's kind of harsh, you know? Mom's been going through a lot lately. I don't know why you're acting like this." His voice was shifting now, a little defensive. I tried to keep my voice steady, but there was a fire building inside me. "I'm not acting like this, Danny. I'm standing up for myself for once. Mom made her choice. She chose you. I've been paying her bills for years, and she leaves everything to you. How do you think that makes me feel?" There was another long pause. He let out a sigh, like he was annoyed with me for bringing this up. "Look, I don't know what you want from me, okay? I didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask her to leave me everything. You're just mad at her, and now you're taking it out on me. It's not my fault." I felt my anger bubbling up. "Not your fault?" I laughed, though it was devoid of humor. "You think I'm mad at you for no reason? You've been living off Mom for years, and you don't even have the decency to check in on her unless it's to ask for something. Now she's gone, and you get everything. I get nothing. You think that's fair?" "I didn't tell her to leave me everything," Danny said, sounding more irritated now. "But I've got my own stuff going on. You don't know what it's like." "Yeah, I do," I shot back. "I've been the one dealing with her bills and her problems for years. I've been the one picking up the pieces when she's in a bind. And now, when it comes down to it, I'm the one left out in the cold. You're not the one who's been carrying this load, Danny. Don't pretend like you understand." His silence was deafening for a moment. Then he spoke, his tone shifting, almost pleading. "Look, I don't want any trouble. I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be like this. We're family. You don't have to cut her off. You don't have to cut me off. Why not just work things out? Talk to Mom again." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously asking me to just ignore everything? To just act like I'm okay with how she treated me? Like I'm okay with being tossed aside after all these years of sacrificing for her? No, Danny, I'm not doing that anymore. You can go on pretending everything is fine, but I'm done. There was a pause, and for a moment I thought the conversation was over. Then, in a way I should have seen coming, he made his move. I'm just saying, he started, his voice low. If you change your mind, I can help you out. I can talk to Mom for you, maybe get her to see things your way. You know how she gets. She just needs someone to smooth things over. I felt my jaw tighten. Are you asking me to beg her for money, Danny? You want me to crawl back to her like I've done every time she screwed me over? No, nothing like that, he said quickly. Just, come back to the table. She's your mom. You shouldn't just shut her out. I was seething now. Shut her out? After everything she's done? No, Danny, I don't need your help, and I sure as hell don't need her. Danny was quiet for a moment, then let out a deep breath. Okay, well, just don't say I didn't try to help. You're on your own with this one. Fine by me, I snapped, and before he could say anything else, I hung up the phone. I sat there, breathing hard, the weight of the conversation settling in. So, this was it. My half-brother wasn't coming to my rescue. He wasn't going to fight for me. He was only looking out for himself, just like he always had. The whole thing made me feel sick. Danny wasn't the guy I thought he was. I had always assumed there was something redeemable about him, some decency hidden under all that selfishness. But I was wrong. That night I went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The weight of everything was pressing down on me. I had lost my mother, but now I realized I had lost my brother too. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I was truly alone in this. I had to start looking out for myself. It was the only thing left for me to do. The call came 3 weeks after I hung up on Danny. At first, I thought it was just another moment of weakness on her part. Maybe she'd finally come to terms with the mess she'd created and was ready to apologize. I tried to steel myself, but when I saw her name flash across my phone screen, I felt that old familiar knot in my stomach, the kind I used to get when I knew I'd have to be the one to fix everything. I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something in me snapped. I wasn't about to let her continue on with this illusion that she could treat me however she wanted and still expect me to drop everything when she called. So I answered, a little faster than I should have. "Hello," I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. "Hey, honey." Her voice came through like she didn't even remember the last time we spoke. "I need you to send me some money. The bills are getting out of hand, and I've been trying to figure things out, but it's tough. Can you help?" Just like that, she launched straight into it. No, "Hi, how are you?" No, "I'm sorry for what happened." It was just an immediate request, as if nothing had changed. The betrayal of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been bracing myself for something, anything but this. This was just another version of the same thing. "I'm not sending you any more money," I said, my voice tight. "Not after everything. You left everything to Danny, Mom. After all the years I spent helping you, this is what I get?" There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could hear her moving around, probably pacing as she often did when she was trying to figure out how to manipulate me. I knew she had been caught off guard by my firm stance, but I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. "You know that's not how it is, honey," she said, trying to sound reasonable. "Danny doesn't even know what to do with everything. He's been busy with his own stuff. But I'm your mother, and I've always been there for you. Don't you think you owe me?" The words hit me like a slap across the face. "Owe you?" I repeated, almost laughing, but it was devoid of humor. "You think I owe you? After everything you've done to me? After everything I've given up for you? And now you're telling me that I owe you more?" There was a tense pause. I could feel her frustration, but more than that, I could feel her sense of entitlement. She still thought that just because she was my mother, I should roll over and do whatever she asked. You don't understand, she said, her tone now becoming a little more defensive. I don't know who else to turn to. I don't have anyone else. No, you don't understand, I shot back. I'm not your backup anymore. I've been your backup for years, paying your bills, making sure you didn't fall behind, covering your mistakes. But now, when it comes time to pay the price, you don't even see what you've done to me. You left everything to Danny, and now you're calling me, asking for more? You're unbelievable. Her voice shook a little as she responded, I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my chest. You don't get it, do you? You've been hurting me for years, Mom, and I let it happen because I thought you needed me. But it's clear now that you've never really cared about me, not like you care about Danny. You've used me for years, and I've had enough. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, and I thought for a moment she might actually break down, might finally show some vulnerability. Maybe she would apologize, or at least express some understanding. But no. Instead, she said something that only confirmed what I had known deep down for a long time. Well, I can't do this on my own, and if you're not going to help, then I guess we're done. Her voice was quiet, almost resigned, but there was no real apology, no acknowledgement of what I was saying. She had no real remorse. This wasn't a mother who was reflecting on her mistakes. This was a woman who was used to getting what she wanted. And when that didn't happen, she was ready to walk away without a second thought. I felt the anger rise inside me, but it wasn't the rage that had consumed me in the past. It was something deeper, something colder. I had been giving, and all she ever did was take. And now, after everything, she still expected me to come running when she needed more. I had to put an end to it. I had to stop the cycle. No, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. We're not done, but I'm done. I'm done trying to be your caretaker, done trying to fix your messes. I've spent years being the one who picks up the pieces, and all you've done is take. Well, I'm not doing it anymore. Her silence was deafening, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But instead, she spoke again, her voice trembling now. I can't believe you're doing this, she whispered, and for the first time in a long time, I heard something resembling vulnerability in her voice. But it wasn't enough. It didn't change the fact that she had hurt me, had chosen Danny over me, over the person who had sacrificed so much. I can't believe you're still pretending that everything I've done for you doesn't matter, I said. I'm not your backup, Mom. I'm not your fallback. I've spent my whole life trying to be everything you needed, but that's not my job anymore. I don't owe you anything, and I'm not coming back. I'm done. The words were finally out, and for the first time, I felt a weight lift off my chest. I wasn't just saying them for her benefit. I was saying them for me. You can figure it out on your own, I said, voice firm. Goodbye, Mom. And before she could say another word, I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen. It wasn't over, but I had finally said what needed to be said. I was done being used, done being invisible in my own family. This was my life now, and I was going to live it on my terms. No more guilt, no more second guessing. It was time to move on. The days after the phone call passed in a blur, but something inside me had shifted. The emotional weight that had been pressing down on me for years, the constant worry, the endless stress of trying to keep everything together started to lift. For the first time in ages, I felt light, free even. It was like I could breathe again. I didn't call my mother back. I didn't check my messages or look at the missed calls. And you know what? It felt damn good. I could already feel myself reclaiming parts of myself I had long ago sacrificed. I didn't have to fix anyone anymore. I didn't have to carry their burden on my back, all while pretending to be fine. For the first time, I was allowed to just be. I spent the next few weeks going through the motions of my day-to-day life. At work, things were quieter. I wasn't distracted by the constant stress of worrying about my mother's next crisis. I found myself focusing more on my own goals, even taking time to do things for me, things I had put off for too long. I got back to my hobbies. I started spending more time with friends who actually appreciated me. I even enrolled in a course I had been thinking about for ages but had never found the time for. And yet, there were moments, quiet ones, when the hurt would creep back in. I would be sitting at home, watching TV, and my mind would wander to her, how she used to be, the way she would smile when I brought her coffee in the morning, the soft laughter we shared on rare occasions. And then I would think about the betrayal, the will, the way she had treated me like an afterthought, and the pain would come rushing back. It wasn't the kind of pain that crushed me, though. It was more like a sting, a reminder that things had changed, and there was no going back. But as time passed, even that pain began to dull. I could live with it. I could move on. A month after our last conversation, I got a message from Danny. At first, I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity won out. "Hey, sis," it read. "I know things have been rough between you and Mom. She's asking about you, and she wants to make things right. Please don't let this ruin everything. We're family." The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure whether to respond. Part of me wanted to tear him apart for being the same self-serving, oblivious person he had always been. The other part of me knew that engaging with him was just another trap, another attempt to reel me back into the same toxic cycle. So I took a deep breath and, without hesitation, typed my response. "I'm not interested in fixing things with Mom. She made her choices, and so did I. I'm done." I hit send, felt a weird sense of finality, and then turned my phone off. A few days later, I got another message from him, this time a little more desperate. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you two, but if you change your mind, I'm here. Mom's not the same without you. Neither am I." I didn't reply, and this time it felt easy. I had made my peace with the situation. I didn't need to explain myself any further. I didn't owe him an explanation. I realized something in those moments, something that had been hard for me to admit. I had spent my entire life trying to please people who would never appreciate me the way I deserved. I had been so focused on being there for my mother, on being the one who saved everyone, that I forgot to save myself. I didn't owe my mother or anyone else that loyalty. The love and sacrifices I gave her were not mine to take back. They were just a part of me that I would never regret. But now, it was time to stop being the one to hold it all together. I started going to therapy. It wasn't just about my mother, it was about me, too. It was about understanding why I let myself be manipulated for so long and how I could stop letting that happen in the future. I started to confront the fear I had carried for years that if I wasn't taking care of others, I would be abandoned. But now, I was learning how to take care of myself, and it felt damn good. Then, one day, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. We hadn't talked in years, and she immediately noticed the change in me. "You look different," she said, eyeing me with surprise. "Lighter, happier." I hadn't realized it, but I was. I hadn't felt like me in such a long time, and now I was starting to rediscover who I was without the weight of everyone else's needs on my shoulders. "Yeah," I said, smiling, "I'm finally putting myself first." The feeling of that small victory settled into me, and I realized that even if my mother never understood what she had done to me, I was strong enough to move on. I had built a life for myself, and that was something no one could take away, not even her. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. I was sad maybe, but not broken. I had learned that sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do for yourself, and in the end, I was finally free.